Have you ever been told you weren't good enough? That you were too junior to handle important clients? I was. For 2 years, I watched as my ideas were ignored and my potential was wasted. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you the perfect cover to plan your exit. When I finally left, I didn't just walk away. I took 60% of their top clients with me. Stay until the end to find out exactly how I turned their biggest mistake into my greatest success story, and how you can do it too. Welcome to another eye-opening story on Dismissal Diaries, where we share real experiences of workplace injustice and professional triumph. If you're new here, this channel is dedicated to those of you who've been undervalued, overlooked, or unfairly dismissed, and who found the courage to rewrite your own story. Before we dive into today's incredible journey of vindication, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell to join our community of professionals who refuse to let others define their worth. I still remember the exact moment I realized I was never going to be valued at Morrison & Reed Consulting. It was a Tuesday morning, and I'd spent the entire weekend preparing a comprehensive digital strategy for Westfield Industries, one of our biggest potential clients. The presentation was bulletproof: market analysis, competitor breakdown, ROI projections, everything. As I walked into the conference room, portfolio in hand and confidence high, my boss, Richard, intercepted me at the door. "Thanks for putting this together," he said, taking my portfolio. "But I think Marcus will handle the presentation. You're still a bit too junior for a client this size." Marcus. Of course. 3 months at the company and already presenting to major clients because he'd gone to the same business school as our CEO. Meanwhile, I was approaching my 2-year anniversary and still being treated like an intern. "I can handle it," I insisted. "I've been researching their industry for months. I know what they need." Richard's patronizing smile still makes my blood boil when I think about it. "It's not about the research," he said. "It's about client confidence. They need to see someone with experience. You understand?" I did understand. I understood that it didn't matter how good my work was or how much effort I put in. In their eyes, I would always be too junior. That wasn't an isolated incident. For 2 years, I watched as my ideas were presented by others. I sat in the background of meetings where clients praised strategies I had developed, while my managers nodded and accepted the credit. My salary remained stagnant, while my responsibilities grew. Every time I asked about advancement, the answer was the same: "You're just not ready yet." What they didn't realize was that I was documenting everything. Every idea I contributed, every strategy I developed, every success that others claimed as their own. It all went into a detailed portfolio of my actual contributions. I wasn't just building their business, I was building the case for my own. The breaking point came during our annual review. I'd brought in 3 new clients that year, developed a social media strategy that increased engagement by 240%, and created a reporting dashboard that the entire company now used. My review: meeting expectations. My raise: a measly 2%. When I questioned this, my department head, Vanessa, looked annoyed. "Look, you're doing fine, but you're still developing. This is a competitive industry. You need more seasoning before you can expect significant advancement." "How much more?" I asked. "I've consistently exceeded every metric. What specifically do I need to improve?" Her answer was vague, filled with corporate jargon about executive presence and strategic thinking. Nothing tangible, nothing I could actually work on. That night, as I sat in my apartment, staring at my pathetic raise letter, something clicked. I wasn't going to get what I deserved here. Not now, not ever. The system wasn't designed for me to succeed. It was designed to extract maximum value while providing minimum recognition. So I made a decision. If Morrison and Reed wouldn't value me properly, I would find someone who would, even if that someone had to be myself. I didn't quit the next day. That would have been emotional and ultimately self-defeating. Instead, I spent the next 6 months meticulously preparing my exit. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally claiming the recognition and compensation I deserved. First, I reviewed my employment contract with a fine-tooth comb. There was a non-compete clause, but it was narrow. I couldn't work for specific named competitors for 1 year, but nothing prevented me from starting my own consultancy. There was also a non-solicitation clause, but it only covered active solicitation of clients. If clients approached me, that was a different story. Next, I assessed which clients I had the strongest relationships with. I identified 8 key accounts where I was doing the majority of the work already, where the clients consistently asked for me specifically, and where I knew they were dissatisfied with aspects of Morrison and Reed's service. I began strengthening these relationships subtly. I made sure every deliverable was exceptional. I anticipated their needs before they even articulated them. I found solutions to problems they didn't even know they had. I became indispensable, not to Morrison and Reed, but to these clients directly. Meanwhile, I was building my infrastructure. Nights and weekends were dedicated to creating my business plan, setting up my LLC, building my website, and establishing the systems I would need. I consulted with both a lawyer and an accountant to ensure I was doing everything by the book. I also started networking outside the company, reconnecting with former colleagues and classmates, attending industry events, and building relationships with potential partners and suppliers. I was creating my own professional ecosystem, one that didn't rely on Morrison and Reed's approval or support. The most challenging part was financial preparation. I knew there would likely be a gap between leaving and generating enough income to support myself. I cut expenses dramatically, built up 6 months of living expenses, and established a line of credit as backup. Financial freedom was essential to making this work. Throughout this process, I maintained my performance at work. In fact, I exceeded expectations more than ever. I wanted to leave on my own terms, with a sterling reputation. I also wanted to make absolutely sure that any clients who decided to follow me did so because of the value I provided, not because I had sabotaged their relationship with the firm. What I didn't do was equally important. I didn't download client lists or proprietary information. I didn't badmouth the company. I didn't breach any of my contractual obligations. Everything I did was ethical and legal. I was simply preparing to offer my services independently to clients who might choose to work with me. By month 5 of my preparation, I was ready. I had my business infrastructure in place, financial cushion secured, and a clear understanding of which clients might be interested in continuing to work with me directly. Now I just needed the right moment to make my move. That moment came sooner than expected. Morrison and Reed landed a major new client, a retail chain undergoing digital transformation, and I was assigned to the account as support staff. Despite creating the entire onboarding strategy, I was once again relegated to the background during client meetings. After one particularly frustrating session where my boss butchered the explanation of a strategy I'd developed, the client's CMO, Sophia, pulled me aside. "You developed this strategy, didn't you?" she asked directly. I hesitated, torn between professional courtesy and honesty. "I contributed to it," I said carefully. She shook her head. "No, this has your fingerprints all over it. I've seen how you work. Why aren't you leading this account?" Before I could formulate a diplomatic response, she continued. "We requested you specifically for this project. They told us you'd be leading the work." That was news to me, and it was the final confirmation I needed. Not only was I being held back, but the company was actively misrepresenting my role to clients. The time for preparation was over. It was time to act. The next morning, I arrived at the office early and requested a meeting with Richard and our HR director. I was calm, professional, and direct. "I've decided to pursue other opportunities," I said, sliding my resignation letter across the table. "I'll work my full notice period and ensure a smooth transition for all my projects." Richard looked genuinely shocked. "Is this about money? We can discuss your compensation package." "It's not about money," I replied honestly. "It's about opportunity and recognition. I've consistently demonstrated my capabilities, and I've consistently been told I'm too junior for advancement. I need to be somewhere where my contributions are valued." "Where are you going?" he asked, his tone suddenly suspicious. "I'm starting my own consultancy," I answered truthfully. His face darkened. "You can't take our clients. Your contract—" The HR director interrupted him with a warning glance before turning to me. "We appreciate your professionalism in giving proper notice. We'll need to discuss transition plans for your accounts." I nodded. "I've prepared detailed handover documents for each project. I want to ensure the transition is seamless for the clients." For the next 2 weeks, I was the model employee. I organized my files, documented processes, trained colleagues on my accounts, and maintained perfect professionalism. I didn't mention my new venture to anyone at the company, nor did I approach any clients about following me. What I did do was post a simple announcement on LinkedIn. After 2 wonderful years at Morrison & Reed, I'm excited to announce my next chapter, launching my own digital strategy consultancy focused on personalized client service and innovative solutions. It's been a privilege working with so many amazing clients and colleagues. I didn't have to say more. Within hours, my inbox was flooded with messages, many from the clients I'd worked with closely. They had questions. Would I be taking on new clients? What services would I offer? When could we talk? I responded to each message the same way. I'm still completing my notice period at Morrison & Reed, and I'm committed to ensuring a smooth transition for all clients. I'd be happy to discuss future possibilities after my departure date. By the end of my first week of resignation, the panic at Morrison & Reed was palpable. Clients were calling, asking specifically about my departure. Some were blunt about their intentions to follow me. Others were more diplomatic, but equally clear in their dissatisfaction with the transition plan. Richard called me into his office, his face a mask of barely controlled anger. "What have you been telling the clients?" he demanded. "Nothing about leaving or starting my own business," I replied truthfully. "I've been focused on transitioning my work as we discussed." "Then why are they all asking about following you?" I maintained eye contact. "I can't control what clients ask or what decisions they make. I've upheld all my contractual obligations." He leaned forward. "We'll sue if you take any clients. You know that, right?" I nodded calmly. "I understand the terms of my contract. I haven't solicited a single client, but I also can't prevent clients from seeking me out once I'm no longer employed here." The remainder of my notice period was tense. I was removed from client meetings, but still expected to complete all my work. I complied without complaint, documenting everything in case there were legal challenges later. I knew I was operating within the bounds of my contract, but I also knew that didn't always prevent litigation. On my final day, I handed in my equipment, completed an exit interview with HR, and walked out of the Morrison & Reed offices for the last time. I felt a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. The safety net was gone. Now it was all up to me. The first call came 3 days after my departure. It was from Westfield Industries, the client I wasn't senior enough to present to. "We understand you've left Morrison & Reed," their marketing director said. "We've been dissatisfied with the direction of our campaign since you stepped back. We'd like to discuss working with you directly." By the end of my second week of independence, 5 major clients had reached out with similar messages. By the end of the first month, that number had grown to 8, representing about 60% of the revenue I had been managing at Morrison & Reed. The cease and desist letter arrived shortly thereafter, claiming I had violated my non-solicitation agreement. My lawyer responded with a simple but devastating rebuttal. Documentation from each client stating they had approached me, not the other way around, along with their reasons for leaving Morrison & Reed. Reasons that had nothing to do with my solicitation and everything to do with the company's failure to deliver the service they expected. Morrison & Reed backed down. They knew pursuing this would only expose their own failings to more clients and potentially lead to further losses. The transition from employee to business owner wasn't easy. Suddenly, I was responsible for everything, not just the strategy work I excelled at, but also accounting, legal, business development, and administration. The hours were longer, the stress more intense, and the stakes infinitely higher. But there was a fundamental difference. Every hour I worked was building something for me. Every challenge I overcame was developing my business, not someone else's. Every success was fully mine to celebrate. 6 months in, I had to hire my first employee to keep up with demand. By the end of the first year, my small consultancy had grown to a team of 5, serving 15 regular clients with a revenue that exceeded my most optimistic projections. And then came the most vindicating moment of all. I received an email from Sophia, the CMO, who had inadvertently triggered my departure. "We're terminating our contract with Morrison & Reed," she wrote. "Their work has been subpar since you left. We'd like to move our entire digital portfolio to your firm if you have the capacity." This single contract would double my company's revenue overnight. It would also send an unmistakable message to my former employers about the true value I had brought to their firm. I took the meeting. As I walked into the conference room, the very same room I had been barred from presenting in 2 years earlier, I felt a moment of perfect clarity. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my own value. The presentation went flawlessly. The contract was signed the following week. And yes, I made sure that Marcus, who had presented my work as his own so many times, was the account manager who received the termination notice. Looking back on this journey, I've extracted several key lessons that might help others facing similar situations. First, documentation is everything. Throughout my time at Morrison & Reed, I kept meticulous records of my contributions, ideas, and successes. This not only helped me build my portfolio, but also provided protection when legal challenges arose. Second, preparation beats emotion. I didn't storm out in anger when I was passed over or undervalued. I channeled that frustration into methodical preparation for my exit. The 6 months I spent building my foundation were crucial to my eventual success. Third, relationships are your most valuable asset. The clients who followed me didn't do so because of my strategies alone. They did so because I had built genuine relationships based on trust, reliability, and results. Fourth, ethics matter, even when, especially when, others aren't being ethical toward you. I was careful to operate within the bounds of my contract and professional ethics. This not only protected me legally, but also preserved my reputation. Fifth, timing is crucial. I didn't leave until I was fully prepared, but I also didn't wait so long that I became bitter or burned out. I recognized the right moment and seized it. Sixth, value yourself properly even if others don't. If I had internalized the message that I was too junior or not ready, I would never have taken the leap. I had to trust my own assessment of my skills and worth. Finally, success is the best response to underestimation. I didn't need to argue with my former employers about my value. The client's choices spoke more eloquently than any argument could have. Today, 3 years after leaving Morrison & Reed, my consultancy employs 15 people and serves clients across 3 continents. We've been featured in industry publications and have won awards for our innovative approaches. And yes, our team includes several junior consultants who are given every opportunity to grow, present their work, and receive recognition for their contributions. As for Morrison and Reed, I heard through the grapevine that they instituted a new talent development program shortly after my departure with clear advancement pathways and recognition mechanisms. Apparently, I wasn't the only valuable employee they had lost due to their too junior mindset. Richard moved on to another firm. Marcus was eventually let go for underperformance. It turns out that presenting other people's work only gets you so far. And Vanessa, my former department head, reached out last year to ask if I had any openings on my leadership team. I didn't, but I offered to provide a reference if she wanted to apply elsewhere. The company that once saw me as too junior to handle important clients now regularly competes against me for new business, and often loses. Not because I'm vindictive, but because my company delivers what we promise, values every team member's contribution, and never underestimates talent, regardless of tenure. So that's my story. From being dismissed as too junior to building a thriving business that outperforms the very company that undervalued me. I didn't set out for revenge. I set out to claim the recognition and opportunities I deserved. The fact that it worked out even better than I imagined is just a satisfying bonus. If you're in a similar situation, overlooked, undervalued, or told you're not ready yet despite evidence to the contrary, remember this: sometimes the most powerful response isn't fighting for recognition within a broken system, but creating your own system where your value is self-evident. Have you ever been in a similar situation? Did you stay and fight for recognition, or did you leave to create your own path? Share your experience in the comments below. I respond to every comment personally and would love to hear your story. If this video resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button to join our Dismissal Diaries community. Every week, we share stories of professional resilience and triumph that will inspire you to recognize your own worth, regardless of what others might say. Remember, being underestimated can be your greatest advantage, if you have the courage to prove them wrong. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.